Have you here. This is a web chat series, and our aim is to educate and empower people living with moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis, probably all of you, and we're sponsored by Janssen Biotech and Joint. And the goal of the program, the goal of why we're having these web chats, is to give those of you living with RA and caregivers the tools that you need so that you can have an active role in managing your disease. I just want to remind everybody that the educational content that is happening in this web chat is not intended to be taken as medical advice, and it should not ever replace the recommendations or the advice of your own doctor. And any questions you have that are specific to your health or your treatment need to be discussed with your healthcare provider. So, and also the participants in today's chat were compensated for the time spent collaborating on the content for this joint decisions program. I want to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Laurie Ferguson. I'm a health psychologist, and I've been involved with Creaky Joints and the mission of Creaky Joints for over 12 years. For those of you who are members of Creaky Joints, welcome. For those of you who are not yet members, I encourage you to sign up at the end of the program. We are a very vibrant, active, and fun online community, and we're created so that we could create an environment for encouraging the strength and sharing experience and information for all of those who live with RA and other rheumatic diseases. And we're over 55,000 strong on Facebook. They say that we're the most popular online community, and so I do encourage you to join. We are joined tonight by Dr. Iseman, the comedian, the TV host. He lives with RA, and that we are so thrilled to have you here tonight. Can you just introduce yourself a little?
Yeah, Laurie. So I am Matt Iseman, and I'm thrilled to be here. I'm also a fan of Creaky Joints. I wanted to let you know that, Laurie. But I'm excited to be here to share some of my experiences living with RA and connect with some other folks who are doing it via joint decisions. I just think it's great that we can be out here, talk about what we go through, and help encourage people to be more informed, be more connected, and be more empowered in their care and interacting with their caregiver. I hope we're going to cover a lot of stuff today and give people a lot of new information and a lot of excitement.
Great. Thank you, Matt. So our chat tonight is titled, It Takes Two, Working with Your to Manage Your RA. And we want to hear from you throughout the chat. So if you've got questions, please click the question and answer button and submit a question to all panelists. And Matt and I will address that at the end of the chat. You can find the Joint Decisions hashtag if you are following along social media. Part of what we're going to do to get your involvement is to ask some poll questions throughout the chat, and that'll be a way so we learn a little bit about you. And here's the first one. It's going to appear in the lower right of your screen. So here's the first question. What type of doctor do you or the person you care for with RA see to treat RA? A rheumatologist, a primary care physician, or someone else? If you'll just click on that, and then we'll begin to get the answers. Waiting now for those poll results. Poll is ended, so we're just waiting to see. We're waiting to have this come up.
This is dramatic. I can't wait to hear the results.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Matt. If you could give us a drum roll, I think that would really be exciting.
Brrr.
So,
oh, wow.
This is great. 100% of you see a rheumatologist to treat your RA. And that's important because the role of the rheumatologist is to diagnose and treat and medically manage RA and the other rheumatic diseases. And so that really leads us to the objective of what we want to talk about tonight, which is the importance of how do you connect with your rheumatologist? How do you make sure that you've got the right doctor for you and make the best of your appointment time and then make those joint decisions with your rheumatologist? So just to kind of kick this off, for many people who live with RA, that process of receiving the correct diagnosis isn't always easy. And Matt knows this from his own personal experience. When did you first experience the symptoms of RA?
Well, I was around 30 years old. Now, I was living in Los Angeles. I was actually living on Venice Beach and just living the life out there doing stand-up comedy. And then I started having pain right here in my right index finger. Now, of course, I attributed it to that I was working out too hard. So I thought that was the problem with it. So I stopped working out, but the pain continued and it actually started spreading to my feet, my back, and my neck. And during this time, I was trying different remedies, different ways to relieve it. I started incorporating yoga, all different things. None of it was having any effect on me. And I actually went to see a doctor initially for the pain in the hands. No one had any answers. I was constantly fatigued. I ended up over about a year and a half before I was diagnosed. I ended up gaining 45 pounds.
Oh my.
And yeah, it was honestly, it was the toughest time of my life I'd ever been through. Fortunately, it was, in hindsight, everything is so much more clear. But at the time, I talked to my dad, who's a doctor. I was visiting my primary care doctor, and we discussed it possibly being a rheumatologic disease. But initially, the blood work wasn't positive. And it was only after about a year and a half, we got an X-ray that showed changes consistent with rheumatoid arthritis. I went in, had the blood work repeated. It had converted to grossly positive, and at this point, it was obvious it was RA. But over that year and a half, it was amazing how many people I saw, how many different methods I tried to get relief, and how nothing worked until I was accurately diagnosed and I started the appropriate treatment.
So you saw, it sounds like, a number of different specialties to try to get your diagnosis.
Yeah, and it ended up being the rheumatologist, of course, who made the final correct diagnosis. But I saw orthopedists, I saw podiatrists, who, by the way, for my bad feet, recommended I wear clogs. And I was single at the time, and I'll tell you, if there are any guys out there, you want to stay single, wear clogs, because there are not many people who can pull that off. But I went to acupuncture, massage, chiropractic. I tried anything and everything, capsaicin creams, muscle relaxants. And until I had the correct diagnosis, none of it worked. And it was unbelievably frustrating.
Oh, so frustrating. And you really had to be so persistent to believe you were going to get a diagnosis.
I had all the information. It took a year and a half for me. So for the average person out there, that's why I think it's so important to have sites like this, sites where you can get information, sites where you can become informed yourself and become empowered and take control of your treatment.
Yeah. Let's just take a moment here for another poll question, because I think this is not, I don't think your experience is that unusual in terms of getting the treatment. So the second poll question is, for those of you who are part of this chat, how long did it take you to receive your RA diagnosis? Did it take 0 to 6 months, 7 months to a year, or like Matt, was it longer than a year? So if you'll just click on your answer for that.
Yeah, it really is. It is amazing when you think of being diagnosed with something. So often we think of things being immediate. And you realize with something that can have such an insidious onset like rheumatoid arthritis, the diagnosis, that can be one of the most difficult parts of the disease.
Mm-hmm. So we've got our poll results, and this tells us exactly that. So 38% of you, it took 0 to 6 months. 19% of you, it took 7 months to a year. But 44%, it took longer than a year. So the majority of people, it took longer than a year to get that diagnosis. What do you think that's about, Matt, that it takes so long?
For me, the onset was slow, and it's amazing how you can rationalize disparate symptoms and explain them again. I thought I was working out too hard. I thought my neck was in pain because I was sleeping funny. I started explaining everything away. And the other part was the blood work wasn't initially grossly positive. So there can be a number of factors, but I think that the best way you can shorten the process, again, is by being your own best advocate and being informed and being a part of it.
So tell us a little bit in terms of that. Obviously, when you have a disease like this, that connection with your rheumatologist makes a difference. How has your relationship with your rheumatologist changed over the years that you've been
Well, I was very lucky. I sought out an excellent rheumatologist, and Los Angeles has some fantastic doctors. And I quickly established, because that year and a half leading up to the diagnosis had been so exhausting, so draining, so trying, I really wanted to make sure that I found someone who was going to be informed, a great advocate, and be a partner with me. And I would say I realized RA is a progressive disease. I saw the damage that was done. I knew I wanted to be aggressive in the treatment, and the rheumatologist agreed. And it was great for us to discuss the treatment options, to come up with something that we felt would work for me, to implement it, and then to follow up and to see, is this having the effects we desired? For me, I know it's important with my crazy travel schedule, a lot of things that can be physical stressors, talking to her and saying, look, there are going to be times when I'm really going to be pushing it. I'm going to be worried about flares, and talking about ways that I can prepare for it and to better anticipate difficult times and try to prevent them. And I think sharing information is so important. And that's why I think for people at home, keeping a journal of the symptoms, keeping a journal of days that are good and bad, and then collaborating and sharing with your rheumatologist and trying to figure out, are there patterns? Are there things you can do better? Is the treatment the most effective? Again, you have a responsibility as the patient to share this information with your doctor and to hold them accountable too. It is truly a partnership. And I think when you view it like that, that's a great first step towards improving your treatment and improving your outcome.
Right. So it sounds like one of the things you do is really keep track of those symptoms, unlike before you were diagnosed when you would try to explain things away.
Absolutely.
Rather than letting things kind of fall off, you are aware of what's going on.
Absolutely. And honestly, even in writing them down, sometimes you'll become aware of patterns that you just didn't see, and again, I think it's information is power, and gather as much as you can and empower your caregiver and empower yourself to take charge of your health. Rheumatoid arthritis can be a challenging disease. The great news is we have so much information out there. There's so many new treatments. And the only way, though, you can take advantage of them is by being informed.
So it sounds like you found a rheumatologist who's really, you're very simpatico. You both want to work in the same way. Do you know anyone, or have you ever had the experience of ending up with a doctor you weren't simpatico with? Well,
I got to say, for traveling around, I don't know if maybe I'm biased, but a lot of the rheumatologists I've met are very caring and very involved. So again, as a patient, if things aren't right, it's your responsibility, it's your duty to speak up and to make sure you find an advocate. And it's like a relationship. Sometimes it doesn't work out. So don't be afraid to meet someone new, to talk to someone else. I always think it's great to get second opinions and just to find someone you're compatible with. Again, RA right now, we know there's no cure. So this is a partnership for life. So finding someone with whom you connect, with someone who you feel makes you work better, I think that's so important. And it's something that you can do for yourself and you can do to improve your quality of life.
So I know I've got some clients who make the choice that the rheumatologist doesn't feel like the kind of partnership you have, but they have that with their primary care, and they kind of have like a team approach in terms of their health care. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's great. Again, I think the rheumatologist, it's so important because to have the information, to have all the specialized information, to have someone who's familiar with it. But you're right. What is important too is to feel like you've got a rapport with someone with whom you feel you can be open, you can share things. And if that's the system that works for you, by all means. We're not saying there's a one-size-fits-all for any of this. But what we are saying is it is important to have a connection, and I truly believe to have a rheumatologist be a part of your team as the person you're communicating with, or at least as part of that team.
Right. So, and that the knowledge, the experience, the
Absolutely.
state journals, you really do have to have some kind of rheumatologist input, even if the person you feel most comfortable with is your primary, or someone else on a health team that's working with you.
Absolutely. And of course, you know, if that's the method you choose, again, it's your responsibility as the patient to try to make sure all of this is coordinated. And a lot of times, I think as patients, sometimes we assume things are getting done. And that's why I just want to encourage people, stay on top of things, be informed, be your own best advocate. That's the way to ensure your best health.
You know, Matt, I also hear you're keeping track of what's going on, but you also have a sense of where you believe the management of your disease can go. Have some goals.
Yeah, I think it's always good when you come into an appointment, come in with a plan. And I think the simplest way to think about it is have short-term goals and have your long-term goals. The short-term goals are, look, what's immediately going on in your life right now? Have you had some recent flare-ups? Are you having particular pain, something you want addressed immediately? And then have your long-term goals. And that can be something, I know for me, one of my long-term goals is always improving my flexibility and figuring out what new exercises, what levels I can push it to. And if right now, I've just gotten back into swimming again. And for me, it's getting to a certain amount of swimming. But I know as I've pushed it, I've noticed my body is fighting back. And so I've talked to my rheumatologist saying, look, here's where I am. In a year, this is where I want to be. What do we need to do with my treatment? What do I need to be doing physically to help get there? And I think if you go in there with kind of the short and the long-term goals and have them written down, don't trust your memory. I always think when you get in that room so often, you can forget and something will slip your mind. Go in there with short-term goals, long-term goals, talk to your caregiver, talk to your rheumatologist, and get them on the same page and come up with a plan.
So it sounds like you don't just show up at your appointment. You really prepare for them. So I just want to remind, or not even remind, some of you may have never seen it. There's a guide on creakyjoints.org/joint decisions, and that guide will give you some helpful tips on how to make the most of your doctor visit. So if you're not taking notes right now, or you want to know more, please go to the website and download it and use that. And there's also on that same place a symptom tracker that you can fill out and take to your appointment, so that then you can be very clear with your doctor. Because I know some of the people I work with get shy. They get shy about admitting the pain. So they get shy that they've had a flare because they feel they maybe haven't done what they should, and they want to minimize or downplay. What I hear you saying, Matt, is write it down, own up to it, and take it in.
Absolutely. And again, this is information that your rheumatologist wants. They want to know, how are you responding to treatment? Do they need to make any changes? So
right.
You not only are helping yourself, you're helping your caregiver as well.
Right. And so when you give accurate information, then you were talking before about looking for patterns, seeing when things are good and when things are not so good. When you give accurate information, then you can have a realistic assessment of what's needed. So let's just let me ask you. It's our third poll question. When you start thinking about when you go in with your healthcare provider, and we know that 100% of you have a rheumatologist, what's the most accurate scenario for you? Go prepared with questions that you want answered. Or you let the doctor lead the discussion and you ask any questions that come to mind. Or you're not even sure what you should be asking during your appointment. Where are you in terms of what happens as you go to your rheumatologist appointment?
I'm already guessing I know what these people are going to answer. These seem like the good students, Lori. These are the ones who are here actually listening to the lecture. And they're saying we're preaching to the choir on some of these, right? I love it. Either that or they're going to say they have the questions because they want to get good credit, but...
But see, that's really what I think that's what we want to move away from, the sense that we're good if we do this or we're bad if we don't. And the understanding is this is a disease and everybody's working to figure out how it works.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here we go. Panel answers. 75% go prepared. Okay, there are the people, as you say, working it. 19% let the doctor lead the discussion, and 6% are not sure what to ask. So that, for those of you who maybe are not as, what would the word be that we would use here, Matt? Not aggressive, assertive.
Proactive.
Out there.
Yeah, assertive.
You know, that symptom tracker and that guide on how to get the most out of your doctor visit might be really a way to help yourself up your game on your own path for that. So in terms of that appointment time, in terms of the things, you talked about the short-term goals and the long-term goals. What are some of your short-term goals? The long-term is that possibility, but what would be a short-term goal?
Things that have changed in the past weeks or so, you know, perhaps since your last visit, a lot of times those are the short-term goals, things, you know, that are bothering you right now. It's important, I think, again, that's really the ebb and flow of the RA. The long-term goals, again, is that's where you're headed and making sure you keep on that path towards wellness.
You know, one of the things I just really enjoy so much about you, Matt, is your hopefulness about the treatment of your disease. You really have a sense of hope that things can get better. What goes into that hope for you?
Well, for me, it was, I mean, literally, I remember when I was told I have rheumatoid arthritis. And I know for most people, it can be so scary being told you have a chronic autoimmune disease for which there is no cure. Honestly, I felt relieved because I'd spent a year and a half with my body deteriorating around me, falling into the worst health of my life, falling in the worst shape of my life. As I mentioned, I gained close to 50 pounds. I was sleeping all the time. And I was just so happy that I finally had an answer for what was causing all of this to happen. And once I had an answer, now I could come up with a plan. Now I knew what I was dealing with. Now I knew, here are the treatments. I can find a rheumatologist and I can get busy on getting better. And I think, and the great news was, again, the treatments, when I look at when I was diagnosed in 2002, even 10 years before then, how the treatments had changed. And since then, just looking at the new treatments that are constantly coming out, that's why I think, look, nobody wants to have rheumatoid arthritis, but if you're going to have a disease, we're very fortunate that there are so many incredible treatments out there, and ones that seem to work well, and new ones on the horizon. And we're learning, even for those who don't respond to treatments, there are other ways modifying your lifestyle, other things we're learning that can improve your quality of life. So that's why I'm so hopeful, I think, is because there's so much information out there and there's so much we have at our fingertips that if we just take advantage of it, we can significantly improve the quality of our lives. So, you know, I like to look at it as glass is definitely half full.
Well, and the other thing that you bring to it, and I think it's inspiring, is your willingness to really be active on your own path. And to, as you say, to keep track honestly and realistically of what's going on for you. So again, I'm just going to emphasize this again because you brought it up, that journal where you write things down, where you really pay attention. Oh my gosh, I had 4 nights where it was hard to sleep. You know, I had a flare, but you also are keeping track of what you need. So looking ahead, this is going to be a more intense period of time. What can I do to deal with that? So you really are thinking about it, managing it, staying active. And the partnership with your rheumatologist sounds like that's a big piece of it.
Absolutely. And, you know, because so often we can get caught up in how we're feeling at the moment. You could go into the rheumatologist and maybe you just had an ice cream cone and you feel great. Or maybe you're just tired, whatever it is. But if you have the journal, it allows you to remember, you know what? I am trending down. Things have been getting a little worse here. I think something's changing, or the converse. You might not be feeling great that day, but as you look at it, it's a reminder, I've made a lot of progress. I've had a lot less bouts. I've had a lot less swelling. You know what? Things are getting better. And I think for your own peace of mind and for your own well-being, it's a good way to keep to remind yourself of what's really going on with the disease.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Matt. I mean, it's empowering to hear how you do it. And one of the things that I think happens when we have conversations with others who've had the same kind of suffering or setbacks, and hear their stories, sort of like, oh, okay, that sharing makes a huge difference. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, and it's great. Again, most people looking at me wouldn't know I had RA. And I think that's why it's so important for me to let people know that I do have this disease, that I'm living with this disease. Look, RA is just a part of who I am. It doesn't define who I am. It's something I deal with.
Right. So say that again, Matt, because I think that is just an important mantra for us to take in.
Absolutely. It's just a part of who you are. It doesn't define who you are. And I think that's why it's important to take charge. Don't let this disease run your life. You run this disease, and you do it by being informed, and you do it by being proactive.
Absolutely. Wow. Wow. Thank you. So I just want to remind those of you who are listening and taking some inspiration from Matt, that journal is something that you want to think about. And then again, those tips for discussing things with your rheumatologist or ways to have that conversation. That discussion guide is at creakyjoints.org/joint decision. And that will really, again, help you make the most of your appointment time. Because we know those times are precious. They're often very short. So we've got some great questions coming in that we're going to address. So at this point, I think we're about ready to take a few questions. So Matt, here's a question for you. What did you have to change about your lifestyle when you were diagnosed with RA?
Well, not a lot. I mean, I've stayed very active. I'm working 5 or 6 days a week. I think the biggest thing I did was I had to cut out high impact exercise. So jogging, I really have given up jogging. As I mentioned, I've taken up swimming, yoga, and Pilates. And honestly, I don't miss jogging at all. It was never that fun. I much prefer these low impact stretching type exercises. I think that are beneficial for anyone, but particularly people who are living with joint diseases. I think something like yoga is something that's really worked well for me. But that's really, it's been primarily the exercise. Other than that, I feel the same. I lead largely the same life.
So there's the flexibility of yoga, but I hear your mental flexibility to be willing to kind of switch up what your exercise routine, rather than complaining or feeling badly you had to change. You can see the benefit of it.
Well, again, what I went through for that year and a half, where I really wasn't able to exercise, and where I felt my body deteriorating, and I felt physically drained all the time. To be able to get my energy back and to be able to get back out and exercise, maybe it's not at the highest level that I used to be when I was in college, but I know where I was when I wasn't being treated, and I know how important it is for me to continue to exercise, to give my body every opportunity to be as healthy as possible. So, again, you can focus on the negatives or what you lost, but you can focus on the positives and still how much you can do. Oh,
wow. So what's been the biggest struggle for you in living with RA? That's someone else's question here.
Wow, that is a good question. I think I don't know. I mean, I've felt so, I guess, empowered ever since I received my diagnosis that I really haven't focused on the limitations. I mean, again, periodically I'll talk to someone, and explain rheumatoid arthritis. And when I say, it's something there's no cure, I'll have it for the rest of my life. It sounds daunting, and yet to me, I realize, look, I'm living with it. I'm doing great, and I'm active, and I know that I'm always going to stay on top of it. So I don't look at it as something that's scary in the future. I look at it as something as, hey, I'm kicking its butt right now. I'm going to keep kicking its butt, and I'm going to make sure I stay on top of it. And I know there's only going to be more information about it coming out. There's only going to be more treatment options. I look at it as the future's only brighter.
So here's another question. It's a hard question. What do you do when you feel you've exhausted your second or third or 10th opinion for a stubborn RA problem. I've even traveled out of state, and I can't get any answers about ankle pain and swelling for the last 9 years and surgeries. Oh, I'm so sorry you're living with that. Wow. Now, from a patient's point of view, Matt, what would you say?
Well, again, I think that's why it's so great to have places like Joint Decisions, to have creaky joints. A lot of times, if you're not getting answers from your caregivers, turn to the community. Odds are what you're going through, another person with RA has gone through as well. And again, there aren't always answers. There aren't always solutions or treatments. But what you may find is someone else who's dealt with the problem. Even knowing you're not alone, even just being able to share it, I think that takes some of the burden off. But you'd be surprised. I think I'm always amazed when I go on these websites and look at these advocacy groups, how much wonderful information is available if you're willing to ask, if you're willing to share your story. People who are on there, I know when I meet someone with RA, there's an immediate kinship. If there's ever anything I can do to ease their burden physically or mentally, I'm happy to do it because I know how much it meant to me when someone was able to do that for me. So it's so difficult. It sounds like what you're going through with your ankle, but I'm going to guess there's more than one person out there who's experienced the same thing and who may be able to offer you some new insight.
And I just want to champion your persistence. I mean, to have that many, to get that many opinions, to travel out of state, to have the surgeries, you've been really persistent, and I think that lifts up a really big resource, and that is the larger community where somebody may know something in that sharing. But
and Lori, that brings up something else, though, that I think I want to talk about. I talk about being optimistic and being hopeful. It's not all the time. I definitely have down days. There are times when you don't feel well, when you do have pain, when you're having a flare. And I think it's at times like that where it's not necessarily the treatment, it's not necessarily the doctor, it's going to be on you. How do you handle these things? I know for me, thank God I'm a stand-up comic. I mean, part of my job is being out in front of people and making them laugh. And I know even when I was at my sickest, whenever I was on stage and I was making people laugh or laughing myself, I felt better. So there are times you're going to need to know, look, sometimes the disease has the upper hand right now. What can I do to change my state of mind? I always think listening to Matt Iseman's comedy should be everyone's answer, but figure out what it is for you. Sometimes being a great CD, find something I think that you can use to help support yourself mentally, because this is a roller coaster dealing with RA. You are going to have ups and downs, and figuring out how you can deal with those downtimes, I think is going to be an important tool for you to have in all areas of life.
So that's another question that was there, Matt, and that's what advice do you have for maintaining a positive outlook? And I think first of all is to be realistic that you can't be positive 100% of the time.
Absolutely.
Space for those down days, but on the other hand, as a friend of mine says, you don't get into a rut and furnish it. Really find some ways to, you find some ways, as you say, your work is really important to you and it helps you laugh. And laughter is a huge part of that positive attitude as you're
absolutely. And I think, also, again, that's where these websites, that's where these advocacy groups can come in handy too. Lean on someone else who's gone through it. That's, vent, whatever it is, but just know you're not alone. We've all experienced tough times as well, and we're all happy to try to ease the burden when we can.
Yeah. So here's a question. It takes me months to get appointments with my rheumatologist. Do you recommend making multiple appointments to avoid this?
Well, my thought would be it depends how often you need to see your rheumatologist.
Okay.
For me, I'll typically go about 3 to 4 months in between appointments. So that works for me. But if you're needing to see them more frequently, I think it's something you can address with your rheumatologist, saying, I feel that we're not addressing, we need to be more aggressive in fine-tuning this care. If you feel you need to see your rheumatologist more often, then it sounds like something needs to be adjusted, and you need to make them aware of it. Let them know that you can come up with a plan and say, look, this again goes back to the short-term, long-term goals. And I think working with your rheumatologist to identify, make sure you're both on the same page, so you're not going home saying, I expect something to happen in 2 weeks, and they're thinking 3 months. Make sure you're on the same page so you don't have this feeling that you're waiting around.
Right. And the other thing that you're really sort of embodying is the shift that many of us have to make from that kind of passive, the doctor will know what I need and take care of me, to really being active, to say, I'm going to have to communicate all of that. I need to see you more frequently. What's the best way to do that? Sometimes a positive relationship with some of those front office people can help you along. Because sometimes the doctors kind of put all that in the hands of the office staff. So how do you work with them to create the best thing for you, but also for you to know how often you see that person and to have that conversation.
You're right, and I think the time to have that conversation is with the caregiver, not when you walk out to make the appointment and the caregiver's moved away. And again, that's why I think have a journal, write out these questions, write out these concerns, so it's not when you walk out and you go, oh, I wish I would have asked that. Make sure you come in and you know what you want to address, and you have your checklist, you ask your questions, you get the answers so that you're all on the same page. And I think, again, it makes your appointment so much more efficient, and you'll leave feeling much more satisfied.
So, Matt, I'm going to start channeling you, because one of the things I'm realizing is you come from kind of a physician culture, and you're not intimidated by it. And I think sometimes people are a little intimidated by the whole kind of oracle of knowledge or the holder of the power. And what you're really doing is demystifying it and saying, I can say that what I need is as important as a doctor, and I want to stay on task with what I want to say, and really show up for that appointment in that way. And maybe the appointments are the same kind of attitude.
I've seen myself when I get sick, sometimes you just want someone to take care of you, and it's easy to fall in that spot. Just tell me what to do. I know we all have a tendency to go there when we're not feeling well. And again, I think that's why a journal can be such a great tool. When you're not feeling well, you've written it down. You wrote it down 3 weeks ago. You wrote down these questions. You wrote down these concerns. So when you do go in, if you're not on your A game, if you're not feeling your best, you don't just sit there and kind of let your appointment run as it will. You still are empowered. You've taken charge. Because again, it can be hard when you get in there. You know, sometimes the caregiver's running late. You feel like they just want to get in and out, and you don't want to impose on them. You don't want to be a high maintenance patient. Stop. Remember, this time is about you. This is your time when that caregiver's there. And that's why I think you need to take charge. And a journal is a great way, even if you're very passive, if you're uncomfortable with it, having it written down, having your symptom tracker, I think it takes a lot of the intimidation out. You can just say, well, here's my information. You can almost hand it to them if that's what you need to do. But just again, I think the last thing you want to do is walk out of an appointment and say, well, now I have to wait 3 months to get my question answered.
Awful, right. And so Matt, here's a different kind of a question for you. How has RA impacted your personal life? Have you been able to find love while living with RA? Sounds like a song.
Did my mom submit this question?
I'm not going to disclose that.
Well, I haven't found love, but I don't think that's because of the RA. No, honestly, for me, I don't know that the rheumatoid arthritis has had much of an impact. I mean, it's one of those things where I've dated people and told them I have RA, but I think again, because I'm pretty aggressive with monitoring my symptoms and the treatment has been effective for me. I'm proud to be out there as someone living with RA who people wouldn't know, to give people hope that, look, again, when you get diagnosed with this disease, it can be scary. But I think it's great to know that there are people out there who are living normal lives, who are doing well with this disease. Again, this disease doesn't define you. It's just a part of you.
So we're coming to the end of our chat, And I want to thank everybody who has really kind of stayed in here, and especially Matt. And thank you for joining us. And we have even more exciting web chats to come. In October, we're going to delve into understanding treatment options for moderate to severe RA. So those of you who are really wondering what some of these treatments are, and maybe if some things are not working as well for you now and you want to look towards some other options, again, this sharing information and getting information is so much a part of what this is about, and that leads to having a little more sense of empowerment. In November, we're going to tackle questions about insurance coverage, and I know that there are lots of issues around that, and we're going to talk about the open enrollment process that will help you better understand some of that access to treatment. And then finally, we're going to wrap our series with a chat on how to stay on track to successfully manage the disease, and obviously those of you who are here are already on that, but how do you kind of keep on keeping on? And we're going to point you to some great resources that would help with prescription assistance. Again, prescription, such a big part of that. So, Matt, I just want to thank you again for your honesty and your energy and enthusiasm and all that you've brought us in terms of your story tonight. Is there any?
My pleasure, Lori. Yeah, I just love to let everyone know again, remember, you're in charge of your own health. So be your own best advocate, be active in your health care. And remember, again, I've said this a few times, but I think it's so important. Rheumatoid arthritis doesn't define who you are. It's just a part of who you are. So remember that and take great care of yourselves. And remember, Matt Iseman comedy is always the best way to feel better.
Well, we'll remember that. We'll look for you on YouTube, Matt. It's great. You bring a lot of sunshine and a lot of cheer and a lot of sense of hope about being an active participant and finding work that you love and being part of the community and giving back is a lot of what you do. And I think that's also a big part of managing and living with the disease. So thank you, Matt. Sure. And check out those resources that we mentioned. The symptom tracker and also the discussion guide. In order, some of you are already clearly on the road to having a good doctor-patient relationship, but most of us can always use a few